Well, thanks.
Awesome.
We
So we were
began
able,
the recording.
yeah, we were able to get the recording aspects, going. First, I want to just thank you for taking the time out of your day to meet with us. We really appreciate it, for this opportunity to learn from your experiences. Let me just introduce ourselves first. My name is Sam. I'm a KPU student. I'm majoring in philosophy and minoring in criminology.
Mm. And my name is Englishan. I am majoring in criminology.
And my name is Manveer. I'm also majoring in criminology. I'm in my fourth year of bachelor's. Yeah.
Fantastic. So
So,
getting close.
Yeah.
Kevin, we also have another member who is on his way. He's a little late. So he'll just jump in and I'll just quickly introduce you to him. And he also has questions as well for you as well.
Fantastic. Sure. Yeah. Happy to
So
answer whatever we can.
awesome. First off, how was your day, man? How is it like the World Cup treating you?
Well, disappointed, obviously, Canada's lost, but we made history making into the 16, so I mean, whatever. And typically Canadians are, hockey motivated, sometimes a little bit of baseball, sometimes basketball, right? So it's great to see that like football is actually being a thing. It's such a powerful and uniting sport that I think we need to embrace it. So
That's awesome.
glad to see it's getting more attention and what it deserves, right?
That's awesome, man.
And
That's what I
yourselves?
like to hear.
You do any
Good, good.
school or what?
So I was
All
watching
right.
the Argentina game today, and I was on my toes. Oof. That was a game. That was a game. I've never seen myself just in fear from when I see 10 minutes and three goals. But yeah, man. Yeah, I would love to actually start about, the background of the ABCS, the Alliance of British Columbia Society. I just want to know what inspired you to help students. May I know the backstory? We would love to all know.
Yes, absolutely. So started in 2024, so almost 3 years, 23, I guess it was. Um, I was doing a master's at Royal Roads University. Just started actually, and the opportunity came to jump on the board. We went through the election process, got elected as the VP external, and one of my mandates was to work with the Alliance of British Columbia Students. So that's when I met Hassan. That's when I met the team, met some of the other member groups that were involved. Spent some time doing a bunch of advocacy work and skills and learning training. Did some lobby days, actions. Kind of had a lot of fun. Really started working out for students and understanding. It was a good eye opener for me to start understanding what really students are doing and facing, and especially international students, which I hadn't realized from you kind of do a little bit of research, kind of have a little of a cursory understanding, but really when you get down and working with folks who are actually impacted by those decisions and processes, it was really, really good. It was really beneficial. So I was on the board active, obviously, became the chairperson of the Alliance and kind of worked at a bunch of empowerment and getting some student leaders and doing some voices and getting out there. It's got some great work, do some great things, and really was engaged in that. And then I ended up rejoining. I took a year off because I was in the middle of my schooling, and I knew I needed to really focus on that, which I did take a year off, and then came back in October of this year, 2025. Um, I ended up being elected as the president for the Railroad Student Union, which is pretty awesome in itself. Kind of a big leadership role. I spent a lot of time with some really cool people and empowering their voices and really appreciated that. And ended up with the ABCS, of course. We did lobby days, did some real impact, met with EB and team and kind of made some lobbying and made some impact. Like we changed some of their processes. So that's good, right? That's what we do. And about the same time, the minister announced that Sunner that they would be changing post-secondary education,
Oh,
and kind of did some research into that, kind of heard what that looked like, and really got lit up and knew that we needed to step up our game because the government, is financially, fiscally in trouble, and what they wanted to do was reduce funding to BC students. And what they're promising was they would take, there's currently plus or minus 26 institutions in the province, and they're trying to amalgamate them down to like less than 15. So that would be really impacting on some of those students. Obviously the identity would be changed for all those organizations, and the personality of schools would be cut. They also talked about increasing our tuition rates, both international and domestic, which was, education, as you can obviously appreciate, is pretty expensive and not everyone can afford it. It's very limiting for a lot of folks already. And increasing, we're facing a crisis, cost of living crisis currently. So how do we justify spending a ton more money on education? We need education, like we need it to prosper
Most
and
definitely.
to be a wherever you do, whether you stay in the province or Canada or international,
Hmm.
it's the right thing to do, right? So really got into some big advocacy. We did some stand-up stuff and kind of hit on that pretty hard because it's so impactful and so important, and I believe in it in the future of British Columbians and all post-secondary students. So that was this year's push, real hard push on that.
Awesome. So my question, actually, my first question is going to focus on how, you said about increasing like student costs. And I actually want to know, what do you think is the biggest affordability issue facing students today? And what is the biggest challenge you faced as a student campaigner? I mean, well, as a campaigner.
Yeah, it's a great one, and it's really hard. Um, Students face, I think, the largest when they talk about affordable housing, or at least housing, they want to be 30% of your income, right?
Mhm.
So, if you're spending like 70% of your monthly income on rent and kind of utilities, you're in a tough place, right? You're barely etching by, and to be honest, most people are because they
Yeah.
have to, because the cost of living has risen so hard. Rent is ridiculous. I mean, people are, doing their best renting rooms instead of like whole apartments or buildings or condos or even houses, right? So they just can't afford it. So that's a real impact. It really hurts our students. And one thing that I noticed is that there's some students who are okay taking lots of debt, and that's fine. But what that does is just postpones their big purchases later for cars and houses and all that, right? So, and they're burdened by that. They need to work. They can't take time off because they have to service those debts, and that's a bad thing. Yeah, so those are kind of the big key ones. Obviously, tuition is expensive. It's not cheap to go to school in British Columbia. I will say it's worth it. I think it's got some high value to it for sure. We got some great institutions. We got some fantastic professors, and I
Absolutely.
believe the accreditation is recognized worldwide to a certain extent. So I think those are important factors. But as a student, you want to function. You want to. I would, if it was ideal and I could, pull out my magic wand and throw some pixie dust around.
Yeah.
Students would just be students. They wouldn't have to work three part-time jobs to make sure they go to school, right? So, they're 4 years, which is what the curriculum's designed for a typical undergrad, right? They could
Yes.
do that. They could get that done, and they could, a couple classes here and there. Some years are going to be heavier than others, but they wouldn't be sitting there focusing on, okay, well, how am I going to pay rent? How am I going to get some food? Um, all these things that are there. And most students, I don't know, have to work, right? Either one or maybe two jobs, or try and squeeze it in, and school becomes no longer a frontline focus, but a second line kind of trying to get this done to better myself, right? And we look at historically, some campuses are much different than others. The food banks for students are hugely utilized. And that's telling, right? That's really, really telling. And it's great that there's opportunities there to have that, but it shows that, hey, our folks our students are in a tough place, right? These learners are doing their best. Yeah.
So then, and my question is in regard to a different type of payment. Um, so what reason do you think and universities use pri sorry private contractors to regulate parking? Uh, in my opinion, at least, it seems ju to be just focused on making a profit. But is there any other reason, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you 100%. Why would you pay for parking in school? Like that's ridiculous. How much more can you squeeze out of your students, right? I think that's absurd. But being on the board and understanding why they do that to a certain degree, yes, it's there for the revenue in some ways. But I also appreciate, yeah, my master's in environmental management and science. So um, part of that parking is to actually dissuade students from driving. Um, the intent is to use the bus. Most schools, you get the UMO bus pass, right? So it's part of your tuition. Not all schools do, but it's a very highly supplemented opportunity for to use the bus. It reduces on traffic. It's greenhouse gases and all that sort of stuff. So I get it. I understand that. It is frustrating, don't get me wrong. And buses for a lot of students are not always convenient. It's not easy to get to campus, because, if you were on campus, if there was on-campus housing, no problem. But that's not the typical case, right? So most students are, in some cases, they're fortunate enough to live with family or friends. And so, cut down on costs by that way. But then they're traveling a long distance. And not all those buses are direct routes. They'll spend more than an hour on routing, and that's difficult. Whereas, if they had their own vehicle or availability of that vehicle, that would probably be a 20-minute ride or something like that. So I get it, understand it. It's frustrating for sure. And I understand some of the principles behind it. Also, they're making profits. There's no great solution to that one.
I agree with you there. Actually, I'm gonna ask you about something about communicating with like university because I'm pretty sure you have done like you've communicated with like universities, post-secondary institutions before in regards to these conversations, right? And these are quite difficult. I believe like any conversation about money is quite difficult, in my opinion, Kevin. So how do you approach a difficult conversation with like the university leaders, Kevin? Like, I would love to know because this is some like tips I can have for further use in my life, and it's I believe like a great thing to know.
Yeah, that's a great question, Sam. And to be honest, I have some gray hair. Obviously, I've lived some life. I've made some mistakes, done some things. And I'll say every difficult conversation starts off with curiosity. And I think that's an important factor whenever if you go into it adversarial or you already have your mind made up on a few things. I mean, sure, you should have your speaking points and you should have some questions to poke at things if you need to. Do your research in the background, right? I think I like to ask questions I already know sort of the answer to and then see how it plays out from there. But when you're really dealing with the institutions, they're struggling too, right? This is not easy for them. Their tuition enrollment is down, but they're struggling with their funds and everything that goes along with that. And a lot of them are very, very restricted in their ability to change and pivot. The process to move around and change things is very, very difficult for them. So sometimes you just go in with curiosity and ask some really good questions and listen. And the couple examples that we've had in dealing with the post-secondary was a good example. We spoke with our president at the Royal Roads University, for instance, and just said, how can we help? What is it we can do because we're sort of all in this together. We're kind of on different sides of the fence, but we're still affected and impacted the same way. And they're like, just keep up what you're doing, which is, bringing, calling for accountability for government, which is the right thing to do, right? So, hey, listen, this is your responsibility. That was one of the big things that we found. And understanding the sympathy on both sides and trying not to be adversarial. There's times 100% you're going to find whether it's the corporate you move to next or the institute you're in now, they're going to make some decisions that you're just not going to make. That doesn't make any sense. Why would you do it that way? But sometimes you just have to move with that and look for opportunities. And if it is wrong and it feels wrong, then you say, hey, I don't, this is what I feel. This is not right. And this is why. And this is how. And they may or may not change, or they may say, hey, thank you for bringing that to our attention. We didn't see that perspective on that. Or, you brought in something that's not there. Government institutions are sort of similar. Government is whoever cries the loudest is going to get the most attention. So, I mean, when you think about how many conflicting influencers are working with institutions and government, they can only handle so many of them, right? So how do you, and that's why, the ABCS has been fantastic at lobbying, huge voices together, getting all the voices in BC together, all the students, 350,000 students. If they all sort of say to the government, what you're doing is wrong, the government's got to listen, right? And the institutions are the same. But it takes time and it takes energy to do that. And doing that with the right presence of mind is important.
Okay, so just last and semester, right? KP and you changed its daily parking cost from $5 to $10. Do you think it is acceptable for people to be forced to pay double the amount they would have paid just last semester?
That's a tough question to answer. Um, right? It hurts us, right? It hurts us, each and every one of us. Um, and I kind of that's one of those ones like, what's the why? I gotta ask the why. What's the point to this? And that's probably the best thing to do is just sort of say, when you have that opportunity to talk with the administration, say why? Like, what are you doing here? What's the purpose? Are you trying to force something, or are you just not getting? Is it not covering your costs? Um, a lot of, and this is something that we need to put into perspective in the last year. Well, since the post-secondary review has come out and the government has refused to start funding schools, schools are needing now to be creative in how they generate extra revenue. They can't raise tuition, right? They're fixed currently at the 2% for domestic, and it's also harder to raise international. The international is already ridiculously expensive, in some cases 3 or higher times for domestic, right? So they are looking at other ways of generating. Is that is that the correct answer? I don't think so. I don't think that's the best. Um, I'll give an example. Royal Roads through University, which is has done fairly well, fiscally kind of stable, if you will. And recently, during this time period, so they're now looking at how to generate extra money off of non-tuition options. They, for some masters, you're working on a thesis or whatever that looks like. You have a certain date that you need to get done. Obviously, school has got a fixed time, and they're now doing extensions. And prior to the last semester, extensions were free. So if you needed an extension, you need another additional 3 months to complete your thesis or, do all the research, no problem. Now, the first 3 months is free. Every extension afterwards is $1,700. So that's expensive. Like that's not a bit of money. That's a huge amount of money. So you can see that's obviously, is it too, yeah, yes, they want students to finish in the 3 years, not 7. I get it. $1,700 every 3 months. That's incentive. That's a motivator. But there's other folks, not in my cohort, but the year behind me, so it's still the same program. They were doing research, and their research, because of the very sophistication of it, goes to a lab, and the lab takes 6 months to do the finalizing and prepare the data and send it back. So that person is not able to finish their thesis on time. They're going to be 6 to 9 months behind everybody else just because the laboratory availability is not there. And so it's not really fair for that person. And it's not their fault that the lab can't produce results in a timely manner. So yeah, do I agree with it? No. Do I understand it? Kind of. But is there better ways to it? Yeah. Government should fund. That's it. Government should back it and fund it, and that's the way it should be. Simple answer.
All right, seems like AB's here. AB, give yourself a quick introduction and we'll get your question going.
Hey, how's it going? My name's Abdullah.
Doing well, thank you.
So how's the session been going so far?
Pretty good. I think so good. I don't know.
So have you guys all gave your questions?
All of them.
I have done one. I have a couple. No, I've done all mine. I believe it would be you and Manveer left.
Yep.
Yeah, we both are
Manvir,
left.
would you like to do yours first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So, my question is like, have you seen any colleges or universities successfully reducing parking costs after students like advocating for the changes? Like, what strategies does they use or in the campaign which help them or the universities to reduce the pricing?
I haven't seen that, and it's interesting that you bring this up. The parking has always been a bit of a pain point. As I mentioned before, I understand why they do it to a certain degree. Also, parking is limited. They don't have a lot of like for the amount of students, they don't have enough parking, right? Um, I've never seen reduced, but I would love to see that. That would be fantastic. That would be that would be such a win. It would be organizing and solidarity, student and obviously ABCS has a bunch of strategies on how that is. We have skills and training to do that, but basically rallying and sending a message and sending the point. And anytime that you have students advocating or really throwing some energy at your administration, they have to listen. They have to, and because if it's just a few emails back and forth or something, the administration doesn't really get too excited. But if they have 200 students sitting in their lobby or sitting in their office, they're going to be excited about that. And it's going to hit the news and the university is going to say, this is, oh, hang on, hang on. We don't want this. This is bad. Um, because not only does it go out in the public, right? So media is going to hit this. Um, it's also all these are monitored by the Minister of Education. So if there's a bunch of changes happening or a bunch of really upset students at a certain particular organization or institution, college, university, the minister will start to look at that. So if you can get energy, if you can get initiative and start building that that solidarity program and kind of really lobbying and put some real into that energy to that, you're going to get some. I can't guarantee you results on that, but people are going to notice for sure.
So, like putting petitions or talking to the administration, sending them emails will highlight the issue and which can help us. Like,
Yeah, you start off, there's kind of an escalation levels you can kind of work your way through. So to see what that looks like. Also, typically students have a voice on council. So the board has, so if someone wanted to, they could bring that up to the board and have that discussion and say, this is the voice we need to be heard on this. Um, and then escalate from there. You have options, there's some options for that. Yeah, and it's um I would love to say we could sit down and have a chat and discussion and kind of work through, okay, what's the best way to get this kind of righted? Because I would say that the parking right now is obviously doubling is not very good. I will say that Royal Roads, just as an example, is $10 a day anyways. So at your 5 days, you guys are getting a bargain, but that doesn't make it right. Right? It's still added expenses and increasing costs to your students, which is wrong, right? In my opinion, 100%. Um, but it may not be the only thing that's going up, right? And so your university might be doing other things that you haven't realized yet either. So it's fun. It's an opportunity where you can sort of look at other things that are missing or other things that are going up in expenses and sort of lump them together and get more because you're not going to get the people that are on these buses aren't going to be too excited about the cost of parking, right? But if they've increased your bus pass, well, then you could combine that together and you have more voice. If that makes sense. Like that solidarity of, hey, just rising costs, right? Let's reduce the costs, whatever that looks like. And here's the steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So do you think parking at a post-secondary institution should be treated as a revenue source or as a student service?
That's good. I apologize. You might have missed this earlier. We talked about this a little bit. Um, I don't think we should charge for parking,
Yeah,
right? 100%. I think that's just it's another way it is revenue service. There's costs associated with it, but the costs are offset by, the revenue generated by the costs. So but I understand why,
yeah,
right? Um, and it's been a trend for a long time. I don't think it's a good trend, but typically what they're doing, and I could be wrong in some sets, but is they're trying to offset the demand on parking. It's the usage of bus, which they want, right? They want public transport versus parking. They want to reduce greenhouse gases. They want environmental impact. All these are factors in why they charge parking. And do I agree with it? I understand it. How about that?
that's fair.
Would I prefer zero fees for parking? Yes. And would I prefer a bus to come by and pick me up and make it easy to get to school? 100%. Sometimes those aren't options for everybody. And I think that's a struggle that we all have. There's no perfect system. Um, I prefer, an easier system, carpooling, whatever it takes, to reduce greenhouse gas, anything we can to reduce our effect, right? BC Transit, I know, is going to electric buses, which is super cool. Whatever we can to sort of reduce our impact on this one and only planet we have, right?
Have you seen any successful student campaigns that resulted in reduced parking fees?
No, not parking fees. I haven't seen that. We have been effective in like housing and stuff like that. We've seen that sort of thing has been successful, but parking is not. I think in the reason why and I know it's a sore point uh, for you folks, but it's pretty low on the what matters to like to their learners' basic, right? I think if you look at it, would you rather work on parking or would you rather work on like housing? You're going to work on housing, right? Because that's a bigger impact. It affects almost all students universally, and rising cost of it is just higher and higher. Also, food, foods supplies, food scarcity. Would I prefer working on parking or would I make sure that everyone gets a full belly every day? I think that's right. So and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I understand what it is, and it is a pain, right? It's just one more little thing. It's like that little pebble in your foot. You can still walk, but it's just a pain, right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, frustrating.
Yeah, so do you believe students who already pay for the U pass or the bus pass should have, like, if they drive, uh, they have an option to opt out from the U pass, or they should have discounts on it?
Well, so I have to speak from experience. I did negotiate with BC Transit UPass when I was worked as a president for Royal Roads University, and the reason how it works is BC Transit will not do more like it's just one all students who are full-time or whatever the criteria are is 100%. There's no exclusion, there's nothing. They just don't have it. It's like just everyone does it. Everyone who's in the membership, one email goes out. These are the people who are folks who are eligible. And so that's just the way it is. So I understand it because it's from the like the logical side, or not the logical, but the logistics side of dealing with this person only wants it for this month and not that month. That's a pain. Super, super pain in the backside. So I appreciate that and I get it. When all the students, all your learners are jumped in, there might be a bunch that doesn't obviously don't benefit, right? I mean, I lived in a rural area, so I had to drive to school. There's no bus for me. I'd have to like drive, 20 minutes to like a central point, then take the bus, which makes no sense. Um, so I'm bad for that. I had to pay my parking because that's just the way it was. Um, but I get it. The reason it's super subsidized, right? I don't know what the one for us at Royal Roads, I think is about $85 plus or minus per quarter, right? So that's about I don't know, it's usually about 80 or $90 a month. So it's like a third, less than a third of the cost. So for those people who need it and use it, it is a huge benefit. And I I have, as a student advocate, I believe that sometimes we all are one group and need to support each other. So yeah, for me, I can afford and I park on my own. That's the risk and expense I take. But I appreciate the people who don't have those same privileges, and so I support that. And so I believe the bus is an essential component of that because for some folks it's not availability. They don't have that means, or they're only here for 2 or 3 years, and so how are they going to buy a car for 2 or 3 years and run that? It's not fair, right? It's not fair. So for me, yes, it's personally it impacted me in a negative way, I'd say, but overall, in the general, the population of all our learners and students, it's a huge benefit that I support.
I agree with you, Kevin. I also actually want to just add on that, what's it called? Before I go to my ending remarks and just thank you. I recently got like a parking ticket for our, what's it called? Yeah, Concord parking, which I found hilarious. And I believe you and I share the same, sense that, like it's completely ridiculous to, just to ticket people who are going there for school, and we're already paying for our education. It's somewhat ridiculous. But I have one really important question, all right? And it's who do you think is going to win the World Cup?
You know what? I mean, so that's a great question. And here's my game. I don't actually, I mean, I care, but I don't really care. All I want is a great game, a good match. That's all I care about is an exciting match, lots of opportunities, lots of fun. I want to see skills, individual players doing their best and showing off to the world what they have. That's what I love the most is watching some of I mean, it's mind-blowing some of the skill sets that I see out there. So yeah, I don't know. I have some favorites for sure, but really, I just want a really, really good game, and I want, I want this FIBA to be the FIBA that sets off North America as, hey, you know what? Football is something, and I want to incorporate that more than just, we have a team, whatever. I want to see it big. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to
So
see.
cool. One favorite, like maybe one like you would probably be a bias towards?
You know what? I love Messi. What can I say?
Yes,
Like
yes.
I love the man. I watched him in 2000 was it 20 when 20 22 22
Me too.
and like just mind-blowing. So and he's he's older, right? So he's not what he was, but he's still good. And I just love his game. Whatever.
Absolutely.
It's
That's
England
awesome,
for
man.
me.
Oh yeah, who's that?
England for me.
Oh, I have my buddy, my coworker's in English. He's diehard, so he's running around with a white shirt every day and hooting and hollering.
All right, all right. Okay, well, again, thank you, Kevin, for taking your time to speak with us today. We really appreciate your insights, and hopefully we get to work and continue to do on behalf of the student across British Columbia. Um, is there anything you would like to tell us before our time runs out? Like any like quotes that you would like to give us so we can remember and carry out through our day?
If only I was that wise. I would love that. Appreciate that opportunity. The one thing I will say, and this is kind of an important factor, ABCS aside, is the unified voices of post-secondary students, right? And so your challenges are at your college and university at the institute are not different than anyone else's. To a certain degree. Maybe the pain point's a little different, attacking in different ways. But all of us, all students, are still striving for one end goal, right? And those institutions are really they're designed to support us, and they sometimes lose that, and they have to survive. I get it, right? That they got their corporate that needs to run in its own way. But I really want to say that the solidarity of voice is important. Um, and that's the clear messaging, taking the time, reaching out, leveraging whatever opportunities there are is important. And the ABCS is that's what we stand for. That's what we're here for. We we're here to support. You know, and I get it. If you guys aren't members of the ABCS, that doesn't matter. We're still here to support because that's what we do. Um, and maybe in the future, who knows? You might be the next leaders. run the organization and making some real impact and real changes. And it's all learning, right? We're students. This is what we're doing. This is a lifelong journey of learning and understanding and appreciating and growing. And we're gonna make some mistakes for sure, and we're gonna make it better at the end.
All right, we have 5 seconds. We just want to say thank you. You have a great day, Kevin.
Yeah,
All right.
bye.
Appreciate it.